We've all heard of the childhood nursery rhyme, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. But when it comes to the Detroit Lions and their playoff opponents that they potentially will face, it definitely has that feel to it. We're going to talk about it in today's episode, folks, so stay tuned.
We used to be a team no one respected. We used to be a team no one feared. That was then. This is now.
First victory of the year on the line. Goff's got it. Back, looks, throws, end zone. Yes! Caught!
You know who we are.
10-5, end zone, touchdown Detroit Lions!
And you know where to find us. We won't be far. We'll be on your front porch waiting for you. We are the New Era Lions. And
we are driven by Detroit.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving in right now. But before we dive in, again, I just want to say thank you all to those that are coming back to the show. Thank you all for your loyalty. Thank you all for your view. Thank you all for everything that you do. It just means so much to me. It's the little whole world for me that I have such loyal subscribers and fans. And to those that are tuning into my show for the very, very first time, I just want to say thank you all for giving my show a shot. I hope you all enjoy the content, and more importantly, I hope to gain you all as subscribers if I've earned and deserved it. But with that, I just want to say to everybody, again, I hope you all had a happy new year. God bless. And with that, let's dive into the content. So here's the thing, folks. When we take a look at this upcoming event that the Lions have, we already know that the Lions are locked in to the playoffs as the number 3 seed. They will go no lower than the number 3 seed. They do, however, have the chance to go as high as the number 2 seed. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole nonsense that happened in Dallas because that is going to be a sore subject for years, and there's no point in rehashing it. It's already happened. We've had our say about it. We know it's rigged. We know it's crap. We know it was a screw job by the NFL. Ain't going to change anything. So now all we can do is move the hell forward. But the Lions do have the opportunity still to get the number 2 seed. So for people that are saying that the number 2 seed is completely out of reach for the Lions, it's not. In order for the Lions to get the number 2 seed, 2 things have to happen. Dallas has to lose to the Washington Commanders this week, and the Philadelphia Eagles have to lose to the Giants. Now, I'm going to say this. There is a good chance that either one of those could happen. Whether or not both of those happen, that remains to be seen. We don't know that yet. But I know that the Eagles have not been very good over the last couple of weeks. They barely beat the Giants at their own place. Then they lost against the Cardinals last week, and now they're traveling to the Giants to play them. So that's by no means an assured victory. When we take a look at the Cowboys barely won against us at their place with a lot of help from the refs. Last time I'm going to say anything about that. But we do know that the Cowboys do not play particularly well on the road. So again, there is a chance that the Lions can secure the number 2 seed. Obviously, that's contingent upon us beating the Vikings, but I'm not at all worried about us beating the Vikings. But just because we have the ability to get up to the number 2 seed does not mean by any stretch of the imagination that our playoff opponent potential is assured. In fact, if we realistically want to think about it, there are 4 teams that the Lions are going to play in the playoffs based upon all the playoff simulations that I could do, and this is going to be coming from the ESPN NFL playoff machine. Now, who are the 4 teams? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about in today's episode. I'm going to reveal who the 4 teams are. You can figure this out if you want to yourself, or you can just watch the video. Choice is up to you, but this I think is a little bit more entertaining than clicking buttons. But we're going to take a look at all 4 of those teams, and then I'm going to give my honest opinion about what is the most likely outcome at the end, and also what I think the Lions will most likely do if they play any of these teams, whichever one they get. So, without further ado, let's dive into it. So, the very first team that the Lions could potentially face is the Seattle Seahawks. Everybody has known about this for a very long time, that the Seattle Seahawks are a team that the Lions could play in the playoffs, and this has been a team that some Lions fans, myself included, have at times talked about maybe don't want to play the Seattle Seahawks. But I have gotten off that thought process, and I'm no longer worried about playing the Seahawks. In fact, I'm not really worried about playing any of the 4 teams that we're going to play. But we'll get to that a little bit further on down the line. I will say this, though, as a side note, before I'm going to start all this, I did take a look at the playoff machine. I did take a look at the schedule. One thing I did notice, and I don't know if this has been the case forever, but this is actually kind of interesting. All the NFC teams are playing against other NFC teams, and all AFC teams are playing against AFC teams. So it's actually kind of interesting how this whole schedule's kind of worked out to where, okay, we're at the last week of the year, playoff races are on the line. This is now where everything's going to come into focus, like really, really clearly. But Seattle Seahawks. How do the Lions play the Seattle Seahawks? Well, first and foremost, we have to understand this. The only way that the Seahawks even get in to the playoffs is if the Packers lose to the Bears. That is literally the only way that the freaking Seahawks can get in, and that's Packers losing to the Bears. So how then do the Lions potentially play the Seahawks? Well, here's what I did. I tried something a little bit new here. I'm going to show you guys the screen, and I'm going to show you guys a pre-recorded screenshot video that I took of the actual playoff simulator, and I'm going to show you everything that I did while I was doing that for this particular scenario. Sound good? Here we go. So, in order for the Lions to play against the Seahawks in the playoffs, here's what would have to happen. Obviously, like I said, the Packers would have to lose to the Bears. But the only way the Lions play them is this, is if the Packers lose along with the Eagles, the Cowboys as well, and if the Lions win. Why is this the case? Well, if the Packers lose, it automatically propels the Seahawks, at the very least, into the 7th seed, because that's the only way they get in. Well, here's the way that works. The 7th seed is going to play against the 2 seed, which means, again, the Lions get the 2 seed only if the Eagles and the Cowboys lose. That is the only scenario where the Lions and the Seahawks play, is if the Lions get the number 2 seed and if the Seahawks get the number 7 seed. That's the only way that scenario plays out. So, very, very unlikely that one plays out. But, and that's mostly because of the fact that it only has one way of working out. But, again, I'm not really particularly worried about the Seahawks, especially after everything that's happened over the last, couple of days. But, moving off of the Seahawks here, the next team that the Lions have a chance of playing against, and this is a team that I think actually has probably the highest probability of us playing against us in the playoffs, the Green Bay Packers. Now, I know for some Lions fans, this would be a very, very enticing matchup. This would be fun because the Lions and Packers are notorious rivals. We play them twice every year. Doing so again in the playoffs would be a pretty enticing matchup, to say the least. Now, how do the Lions play against the Packers in the playoffs? Well, there's actually 3 ways that this could happen, and we're going to talk about all 3 scenarios the exact same way that I did with the Seahawks. So again, you're going to be seeing some pre-recorded video of me punching in the stuff for the playoff machine. So here's scenario number 1. First and foremost, the playoffs for the Packers is achieved if they win against the Bears. So if they win, they're in. However, though, certain things can happen that will alter whether or not the Packers are at the number 7 seed or at the number 6 seed. Pay attention. Here's the first scenario. If the Packers win and they get in, they're at the number 7 seed, like I said. But the Lions, again, will get the number 2 seed if, like I said, the Eagles and Cowboys lose, but also if the Rams win. Because if the Rams don't win, or they lose, then they would drop down to the number 7 seed, and the Packers would move up to the number 6 seed, which will play out a little bit later here. But here's my whole point. At that point, the Packers are the number 7 seed, the Lions are the number 2 seed. So that's how that particular scenario plays out. So that's scenario number 1. Scenario number 2, which involves the Packers. Again, this is what happens. If the Cowboys win against the Commanders and the Rams lose, then you have a scenario which happens like this. Regardless of what happens with the Eagles game, regardless what happens with the Seahawks game, and regardless what happens with the Lions game. So Eagles, Seahawks, or Lions could win or lose. It does not matter. The Lions will then play the Packers at the 6th seed, and the Lions will be the 3rd seed. So again, that's what happens in that particular scenario as I just showed in the video. Now, those are relatively reasonable ways that could happen. Because again, the Rams could beat the Seahawks. The Cowboys and Eagles, they could lose both of their games. The Cowboys could win their game. The Rams could lose their game. Again, these are all very, very theoretically possible scenarios. The most extreme scenario that I was able to find where the Lions and Packers play each other was this. Again, Lions get the number 2 seed. We already know how the Lions get the number 2 seed. Here's how this one plays out. I'll show you guys on the screen. In order for this scenario to play out, the Packers lose against the freaking, against their team, which is the Bears, if I recall correctly. If the Packers lose, the only way that they can get in if they lose is if the Cowboys, Eagles, Seahawks, and Saints all lose. And then at that point, just by sheer conference record, I think it is, they would then hold the number 7 seed, and then they would have the Lions, if they win, obviously, at the number 2 seed. So there is a way for the Packers to get in by losing, but they would literally have to require 4 other teams to lose to somehow, some way get into the playoffs. That's a hard road to try and hope that 4 other teams lose. It's just much easier for the Packers if they win and get in. So that's why I said that is a very extreme way that one works. But it is another potential scenario where the Lions and Packers could face up as the number 2 and the number 7 seeds. So that's that scenario. That covers team number 2. We've already revealed the Seahawks and we've revealed the Packers. Here comes team number 3. This is a team that I guarantee you ain't nobody even thought about up to this point. And until I started punching in the numbers in the playoff machine, I hadn't even thought about them. But the team is the New Orleans Saints. Yes, the Lions could, in theory, play against the New Orleans Saints in the wild card week. Here's how it happens. So, how, first and foremost, do the Saints make the playoffs? Well, the only way the Saints make the playoffs is if both the Packers and the Seahawks lose, which, again, theoretically could happen. The Seahawks, like I said, they're playing against the Cardinals this week, and if I recall correctly, the Packers are playing against the Bears. So, again, those are 2 theoretically possible games that could potentially go in the Saints' favor. Now, again, the only way the Saints and the Lions play is this. Again, the Lions would have to secure the number 2 seed, as I'm showing up on the screen. That would mean Eagles and Cowboys would have to lose, Lions secure the number 2 seed. And then, as I also stated, the Seahawks and Packers would have to lose, so then that way the Lions could get that matchup. But there's one other team that also has to win, and that's the Bucs. The Bucs have to win their game so that way they maintain the number 4 seed, and then the Saints slide in with the number 7 seed. The Rams in this scenario don't have any bearing because it doesn't really matter. At that point, they're going to stay either at the number 6 seed. Well, actually, they're going to stay at the number 6 seed whether they win or lose or not because they have still a higher, if I recall correctly, conference win total than the Saints do. So again, that's how that scenario plays out. So there is a way the Lions could play the Saints for the wild card week. Now, the final one. This is the team that has been broadcasted the most. This is the team that a lot of people think the NFL is setting the Lions up for, and that's the Los Angeles Rams. Now, there are 2 ways that the Lions play the Rams in this wild card scenario, as I'm about to show you. Here's scenario number 1. The Rams are already currently in the playoffs as it stands because they just clinched a playoff spot last week, so they're in the playoffs no matter what. But the only problem is they're not going to go higher than the 6th seed. They're either playing in the 6th seed or the 7th seed, but they're in. So here's how this happens. In this first scenario, as I'm about to show you, Lions doesn't matter if they win or lose. They're going to stay at the number 3 seed. But if the Rams win, they stay at the number 6 seed because what I'm trying to point out here is that, okay, if the Lions win or lose, they stay at the number 3 seed, and this also is contingent upon the fact that the Cowboys have to win. Because if the Cowboys win, they automatically lock up the number 2 seed, and it's irrelevant what the freaking, the Eagles do or any other team does. Packers, Seahawks, it's a completely irrelevant story. So, Lions would be locked into the 3rd seed, the Rams would be locked into the 6th seed. Now, let's talk about the second scenario that this happens. Again, what would happen in this scenario? In this scenario, the exact opposite happens. Eagles and Cowboys lose, Lions secure the 2nd seed with the win, so now they're in the number 2 seed. Well, that would then mean that in order for the Rams and Lions to match up, the Rams would have to lose their game against the 49ers, and then the Packers would have to win their game against the Bears, which would, as I said earlier with the Packers scenario, propel the Packers up to the number 6 seed, and it would drop the Rams down to the number 7 seed. And again, the Seahawks game is irrelevant here. So again, right then and there, you have every single possibility of a playoff scenario that the Lions could face. They have the potential to play against 4 teams in the wild card weekend. The Seahawks, the Packers, the Saints, and the Rams. Now, obviously, out of all those teams, the most likely scenarios in my case are this: the Rams or the Packers. I don't really see us getting the game against the Seahawks because the Seahawks have to hope and pray that first and foremost the Packers lose so that way they can even get into the playoffs. And then we'd have to hope that the Eagles and Cowboys lose so that way the Lions can get the 2nd seed. So that seems like a lot of extra help and a whole bunch of extra push that has to be put into place just so that way that matchup can occur. So I don't think that's likely to happen. The same thing is true for the Saints because it's like, listen, they only make the playoffs if the Packers and the Seahawks lose, and they win, obviously. So there's that. Now, that would then also mean that, again, much like with the Seahawks, Lions would have to win, Eagles and Cowboys would have to lose, so that way would be another 2 seed versus 7 seed. So not very likely. So then what's the more likely scenarios here? In my honest opinion, the 2 most likely scenarios are this. The first one is where the Packers win, and then the Cowboys win, the Rams lose, Lions win or lose, doesn't matter. You have the Packers at the 6th seed, the Lions at the 3rd seed. So that, in my opinion, is a very, very, very likely scenario. So that's scenario number 1. Scenario number 2 that I think is very, very likely. Lions win or lose, stay at number 3. Rams win against the 49ers, and we get to play the Rams at the number 6 seed. Now, I'm going to say this right now. Out of those 2 scenarios, which one do I think is more likely? I'm going to be dead honest with you. I think it's going to be the Packers one because you have to think about it. Who do the Packers play? First and foremost, the Packers, if I recall correctly, are at home, and they're playing against the Bears. So they got home field advantage, and they're playing against a team that's already eliminated from the playoffs. So for me, I think the Packers win that game. Then you take a look at the Rams. Who are the Rams playing? They're playing the San Francisco 49ers, and they're on the road, if I recall, again, correctly. So again, I'm not saying that the Rams can't win. But I'm just simply saying it's a lot more of a probability that the Packers are going to pull out the victory against the Bears rather than the Rams are going to go into freaking Candlestick Park, if I recall correctly, that's where they're playing at, and beat the freaking 49ers. So at that point, I ask myself this question. Regardless of who we play, whether it's the Packers or the Rams, how do I think we do? I think we do fine either way. I think if we play Matthew Stafford in a homecoming towards Detroit, we handle that one just fine. Same thing with the Packers. Now, I would like to play the Packers because we have a little bit more familiarity playing with them rather than the Rams. We haven't played the Rams in 2 years, so it's going to be a little bit of a different team, a little bit of a different flavor of an opponent than what we've had in years past. But it's like, listen, we play the Packers twice every year. We've seen what Jordan Love and this team can do. We've seen what they can't do. So it's like, listen, as far as a familiarity basis, I think I would like the Packers a little bit more. But regardless of who we play, whether it's the Seahawks by some chance, whether it's the Packers, the Saints by some chance, or it's the Rams, I think the Lions will do just fine. However, though, I would like to hear what everybody else's thoughts are. What would be, in your opinion, the dream matchup? What team would you like to play against the most? And, hey, just for as they would say, kicks and giggles, if we do play against the Packers, what do you think the score outcome is there? If we play against the Rams, what's the score outcome there? Again, I just want to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions after I have presented this possibility of whatever team we're going to play in the playoffs. Because I know for a lot of people, they're thinking that the NFL is already set up that we're going to play against the Rams. But it's like, listen, there are still a lot of potential scenarios out there where we could play the Saints, the Packers, or the Seahawks. So it's like, listen, the Rams are not chiseled in stone, penciled in just yet, but there's a possibility we could play them too. But having said that, and having presented the evidence, presented all that there is, I just want to say thank you all for watching yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode I got coming at the end of this one. But I also encourage y'all, please, to do this. Make sure you also like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If by chance you subscribed in the past, you forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and not had a chance to do so, again, I want to highly, highly encourage y'all to subscribe. It helps me out, and I'm thankful for every subscription that I can get my hands on. But I also want to encourage y'all, please, to turn on that bell notification icon as well, so that way you never miss any more content that I push out. I also want to encourage y'all to please do this as well to help in that endeavor. Share the content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook. Share it anywhere and everywhere you can, so that way this channel can grow, it can spread, and we can get more and more people in so the channel continues to do well, and we can continue to have great conversations about football and share like-minded fans' ideas about the Detroit Lions. And with that having been said, I just want to again say thank you all for what you guys do. You guys are an absolutely amazing crowd, and I'm thankful for every single one of y'all. And I just want to, again, hope you all enjoyed the content, but I also want to say this. If you just became a subscriber, welcome to the family. And if you still haven't decided to subscribe and you still need a little bit more time, hopefully you'll come back and I'll get another chance to do so. But until that next time, I just want to again say to everybody, God bless. Hope y'all had a happy new year. And until the next time we meet, I'll see y'all in the next episode.